How about you?
I started teaching again in Peru, so that's cool.
That's really cool.
Like, we're good. I see the live button. Live from Alpine, California.
Tuesday night.
Do not adjust your televisions.
That's right. What was that saying? What outer limits or something? It was, you guys are way too young to remember, even know about
I know
that.
what you're talking about, but
Okay, so tonight we're going to look at something that we've looked at numerous times, but we've never really focused on that particular thing. And that is dying to self. Okay, I think we've looked at denying self in the past, and it certainly has been in the number of scriptures. There needs to be that our desires, our will being done, and so on and so forth. So what I like to do all the time, as much as possible, and that is to look at how this existed in the life of Christ, because I mean that's what he's trying to conform us to, right? He's trying to conform us to the image of Christ, and so let's take a look at how this dying to self played out in the life of Christ. So we're going to begin in the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 3. And as we go through these things, again, we're going to list the scriptures vertically, and then next to them, we have like about 10 or 12 scriptures that we're going to look at. And next to those scriptures, we're going to write out what we see, how he died to himself. Okay? So Matthew chapter 3, and we're going to look at verses 13 to 16. Someone want to read that, please?
Then Jesus came from Galilee to the Jordan to John to be baptized by him. John would have prevented him, saying, I need to be baptized by you, and do you come to me? But Jesus answered him, Let it be so now, for thus it is fitting for us to fulfill all righteousness. Then he consented, and when Jesus was baptized, immediately he went up from the water, and behold, the heavens were opened to him, and he saw the Spirit of God descending like a dove and coming to rest on him.
Go ahead and read 17 too.
And behold,
he'll come back.
First by submitting himself to John, telling him that he needs to be baptized.
Yep. And vice versa, right? Because John, rather than accept what John said for him not to be baptized, he submitted himself to John, but also didn't go by what John recommended. What was John's recommendation? Well, I need to be baptized of you, rather than you be baptized by me, right? And that's, again, as we look at these things, this is going to help us understand that there's going to be people in our life that are going to either make demands or suggestions or recommend, oh, you don't need to do that. You don't need to deny yourself of that or whatever, die to yourself in that area. And so we're not to go by what other people are recommending or suggesting. We need to die to that area of other people's. Anything else? What about the baptism itself? What kind of baptism was it?
What
thought or said or such, but he submitted himself to that. Okay, as we're going to see one of the last verses in Philippians chapter 2,
he had the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil, and when he had fasted 40 days and 40 nights afterward, he was hungry. Now when the tempter came to him, he said, If you are the Son of God, command that these stones become bread.
Okay, rather than come back and look at all of them, let's just stop right there.
Okay.
And how was it that Jesus died to himself rather than his will being done in these few verses?
He was led by the Spirit.
That's right. Submitted himself to be led of the Spirit. And again, all of these things, just as a reminder, are serving as examples to us of how we are to be as Christ is trying to be formed in us. Peter, Daniel, what were you going to say?
He submitted his own body to be hungry and fast.
Yeah. What else? Keep going along that line, Peter. What else?
He allowed himself to be tempted.
Okay, yeah. And what was the temptation?
Turn stones into bread.
Yeah, and think this through. What was that temptation?
To make himself into God, like
to take things into his own hands, right? He had, and because Satan said, "You're the Son of God," he wasn't questioning. Remember, that word "if" is not maybe, maybe not. It's since. Satan is saying to Jesus, since you are the Son of God, do what? Well, turn these stones into bread. Meet your own needs. Take things into your own hands. Unsubmit yourself, if you would, to the Father and to the Spirit to be taken care of, okay? Or take care of yourself, in other words, all right?
Also, like, he was trying to, Jesus just fasted, right? So he was hungry.
Mm-hmm.
So he's like, hey, help yourself.
Yep.
You don't have to deny yourself anymore, right? Satisfy your senses right now. You can do it. You're the Son of God.
That's right. You can do anything. That's right. But again, what is he expressing to us? A life that is completely surrendered, completely submitted. And to do that, what do you have to be doing? You have to be trusting, right? You have to be trusting that as I'm doing this, well, the Father is going to take care of me. And that was true throughout his whole life, and especially during his ministry. And so, too, for us, serves as an example to us. All right, Alex, why don't you pick up where he left off in verse 4?
But he answered and said, it is written, man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds from the mouth of God. Then the devil took him up into the holy city, set him on the pinnacle of the temple, and said to him, if you are the Son of God, throw yourself down, for it is written, he shall give his angels charge over you, and in their hands they shall bear you up, lest you dash your foot against a stone.
Okay, so why don't you go ahead and read verse 7 too, because it's kind of hard to make a judgment on what about that, right?
Jesus said to him, it is written again, you shall know the Lord your God.
Okay, so the second temptation, what do we see happen? How he was putting self aside. How did he do that in this?
He let the devil take him up to the holy place.
Okay. Okay, what else?
he is by throwing himself down.
Yeah. And what would that do? What would that cause the people to do?
Whoa.
Right? Be impressed with him and to be in awe of him because he jumped off the highest pinnacle of the temple, and here he is. But also to be tempting the Lord, tempting his Father, going against. So he didn't do that. Let's finish out on verse 8. Again, the devil taketh him up into an exceeding high mountain, and showeth him all the kingdoms of the world, and the glory of them, and saith unto him, all these things will I give to thee, if thou wilt fall down and worship me. Then saith Jesus unto him, get thee hence, or behind me, Satan, for it is written, thou shalt worship the Lord thy God, and him only shalt thou serve. Then the devil leaveth him, and I like how Luke adds one thing that Matthew doesn't, and that is Luke tells us that he left him for a season. What does that imply?
For a year.
He'll be back, right? And he did come back. He came back numerous times in different forms. One of them was through Peter. Matthew chapter 16. And so he left him, and behold, angels came and ministered to him. And so what do we see here? How Jesus put himself aside, did not exert his own will to be done. What was Satan offering him?
All the kingdoms of the world.
That's right. And what did Jesus come to redeem?
The people.
That's right. But give you these. You don't have to go to the cross. I'll give it to you. The easier way out. You don't have to suffer. But Jesus didn't take the easy way out, did he? Okay? And self would desire to do that, wouldn't it? In fact, remember Jesus, when he was in the garden, he was praying, Father, if it's possible, what? Let this cup pass from me. And so here again, take things into your own hands and do it this way rather than the way that had been determined since the foundations of the world to redeem mankind. Okay? All right. So, I mean, what we've seen just in this section, I think prominently is the need to die to self of taking things into your own hands and doing it. And I mean, that's so us, isn't it? Yeah. Okay, a problem comes up or a need comes up. Okay, well, I'll do it this, and our mind starts going, and well, we need to say, well, Father, what do you want done here? What's your plan in this? And not lean to our thoughts and stuff. Sometimes he does, and that's how he works. But we can't rely on that. We need to bring it before the Lord each time. Well, let's go to Matthew chapter 26. Matthew 26. And we're going to look at verses 42, and then we're going to jump over to verse 51 through 56. Matthew.
Again, for the second time, he went away and prayed, My Father, if this cannot pass unless I drink it, your will be done.
Okay, so obviously he's dying to himself there, right? That desire to not go through with, just that self-preservation, and your will be done. And you know, we just last night we were looking at executed, some were cut in half, some went through some heavy things, but God didn't deliver them out of that, did he? But he did deliver them. I love the testimony of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, you know, right before they're thrown into the fire. Nebuchadnezzar, it has to die, right? Because self is always seeking to preserve. I mean, that's the strongest instinct in man, isn't it? Self-preservation. And yet, if you're going to follow Christ, that can't be. It has to be his glory. But how you can't do that without what? Entrusting him with yourself, with your well-being, with here and now and eternity. But once you do that, then, well, come what may, God's going to take care of me. All right, let's do 51 through 56. Peter, Daniel, read those.
Okay.
Same chapter.
And suddenly one of those who were with Jesus stretched out his hand and drew his sword, struck the servant of the high priest, and cut off his ear. But Jesus said to him, Put your sword in its place, for all who take the sword will perish by the sword. Or do you think that I cannot now pray to my Father, and he will provide me with more than 12 legions of angels? How then could the scriptures be fulfilled that it must happen thus? In that hour Jesus said to the multitudes, Have you come out against a robber with swords and clubs to take me? I sat daily with you in the temple, teaching in the temple, and you did not seize me. But all this was done that the scriptures of the prophets might be fulfilled. Then all the disciples forsook him and fled.
So, what do you see here? What's being offered to Jesus?
A way out.
Yeah, a way out. By Peter's little sword, right? And not that I'm going to demean Peter by any means. But then also, on a bigger scale, what came out of the mouth of Jesus?
12 legions.
That's right. About 180 some thousand. Yeah, he could. But self was not going to rule. Okay? Now, let's go to Mark chapter 14. And actually, for maybe time's sake, and because the verses that we would look at would be 32 through 42, but this is the Garden of Gethsemane again. And this is where Jesus prays and resists the temptation and sweats, as it were, great drops of blood. And his disciples, after he's asked them to pray with him, what do? They sleep. Fall asleep, that's right. And so, again, the denying of self, the dying to self in a lot of different ways here. One through. And we're going to look at verses 33 through 37. This is Jesus on the cross. Luke 23, 33 through 37. Let's just go around the room. Let's take 2 verses each. Kevin, you want to start us off?
And when they came to the place that is called the Skull, there they crucified him and the criminals, one on his right and one on his left. Jesus said, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." And they cast lots to divide his garments.
Peter.
And the people stood, the rulers with them sneered, saying, "He saved others, let him save himself. If he is the Christ, the chosen of God." The soldiers also mocked him, coming and offering him sour wine, and saying, "If you are the king of the Jews, save yourself."
Think of this. I think I know where, but I'm going to have you find it, okay? And that is that it is prophesied of Christ that he knew the Father would not allow his soul to see corruption in Sheol. Okay? Pick a word. What word are you going to look up, Peter Daniel?
I'm going to do Sheol.
Sheol, that'd be a good one. Yeah, you want to try to pick the least common one, right?
Yep.
Or corruption. Do you know where it is? No.
I know it's in Psalms somewhere.
Well, don't be. You got to find it, buddy. Find it, Kevin?
Psalm 16:10, "For you will not abandon my soul to Sheol, or let your Holy One see corruption."
There you go. That's it. Psalm what?
16:10.
Psalm 16:10. Did you read the whole thing?
Just 16:10.
Okay. Why don't you read the
16. "You make known to me the path of life. In your presence there is fullness of joy. At your right hand are pleasures forevermore."
All right. So that's a part of a messianic psalm. A messianic psalm is something speaking of Christ, just like Psalm 22 and a number of other ones. And so this is the foundation for being able to die to self. It's trusting ourselves with the Father. Ourselves to the Father, I should say, not with the Father. Every part of life. Actually, one of the first things he taught on them with his time with them was in the Sermon on the Mount, when he talked in Matthew chapter 6 about don't be anxious for anything, right? Consider the birds of the air. They're not sowing, they're not reaping, they're not doing all the plowing and stuff. Your Father takes care of them. And then the lilies of the field, and how Solomon in all of his glory wasn't clothed such as one of these, and how God takes care of them. He'll take care of you. What? Christ, or you're going to die. And you're going through torture for Christ, right? And you're seeing that, reading about that over and over again, of how Richard Wurmbrand and countless others were threatened with all kinds of torture, suffering, and even death, and some did die. And yet they had entrusted themselves to the Father's keeping. And I may die here and now, but I know. I love that statement by Job. Let's look at it. It just came to my mind. I know Job's a long book, and I'm trying to think of some of the words. Can you help me, Alex?
Is that the one where he says that he will see?
Yes.
I know that my Redeemer.
Yep, I
liveth.
know. For I know
Is that-
that my Redeemer lives. It's a song that we sing sometimes.
And I shall see him
Yep, on that day.
on that day. Is it 26?
Anybody find it? You get the first cookie if you find it. Alex is really going now once he heard that.
Yep, 1925.
1925.
But for $19 and $25.
Let's look at that. Alex, why don't you read it?
For I know that my Redeemer lives, and he shall stand at last on the earth.
And go ahead and read 26 too.
26.
And though
And after my skin is destroyed, this I know, that in my flesh I shall see God.
Amen. What a wonderful confidence, huh? But there again, that is what it looks like to be able to die to self when you completely trust the Father. Again, I need to write that down for my notes. What was it, Job what?
19:25. Oh, the next verse is really good too. 27. Whom I shall see for myself, and my eyes.
John 18. Verse 11. Well, this is Jesus telling Peter to put up his sword, right? He's identified as Peter, the one who took out the sword that we just read there in Luke chapter 23. Let's go to Hebrews chapter 12, verse 3.
You know, one thing that just struck me right now is we don't hear a lot of dying of self, except they mention that the only time it might happen is when you are faced with that decision of life and death. That's the only way I heard it put.
Mm-hmm.
But they don't think about dying to self on a daily basis,
Yeah.
right?
Like
on
Jesus.
don't put it that.
Matthew 16. Matthew 16. You know, after Peter receives the revelation that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, and then Jesus from that time forth begins to explain to his disciples he must go to Jerusalem and suffer many things and be killed and rise again the third day, and then Peter rebukes him, where Jesus says, if any man will come after me, let him do what? Because what's the greatest motivation in man? Self-preservation. So if you're not daily dying to self now, practicing that, living that way, when the time comes, highly unlikely. You might think that you will, and I hope you would if it came to that. But it's something that needs to be lived out every day. And that's, again, why we're looking at the life of Christ. When he was given opportunity after opportunity, we could look at so many examples where Jesus did not exert himself, but instead entrusted himself to the Father, and the Father's will being done. That 3, Hebrews 12:3. For consider him, who's the him? Jesus, yes. How do you know that? Good guess. I know you probably knew that for a fact, but I want a verse, right? Context, right? Put on the cross. It was everything that led up to that. all the things that were said against him. You're illegitimate, you're a bastard, you're the prince of demons, you're all of these things. And rather than exert his own, no, I'm not, and I can prove it, right? But again, this may be the last time I say this. I know you might be tired of hearing it. But listen, it's because of Psalm 16. He knew his Father was going to take care of it. And after the temptation in the wilderness, who came to his aid?
Angels.
The angels came and ministered to him. So he went through all of this, entrusting himself, his care, his livelihood, not livelihood, but his everything to the Father, and the Father came through. And so too with you and I. All right? So, one more verse. Let's go to...
Was in the form of God, did not count equality with God a thing to be grasped.
Right? We're so interested in our rights, aren't we?
We insist.
That's right. Yeah. And of course, these days and age, we're told, you deserve. And I get so sick of those commercials, man, that
You're worth it.
get what you deserve. Well, you don't want what you deserve. Believe me. Okay? But that's the mentality, and that feeds into that whole thinking. And if you're going to follow Christ, hey, that's not your life anymore. Even though there were times, like in the life of Paul, when he was led of the Spirit, to exert some of his rights. Are you going to scourge a Roman citizen, he said, that on one occasion, and yet he had been scourged numerous times before, right? But we trust he was led of the Spirit in everything that he did. Okay, so as we look at all those things, we see that Jesus died to self, denied self in body, in mind, in emotions, in every aspect of life. Verse 14, seeing then that we have a great high priest. What about this great high priest? Well, he's passed into the heavens. Who is it? Jesus, the Son of God. Let us hold fast our profession. Again, this was written to Hebrew believers who were being pressured by their Jewish family that hadn't put their trust in Christ to leave Christ, and they were being pressured by the authorities, the Roman authorities, to deny Christ. It's heavy. So it was coming at them from two sides. And look at verse 15. This is one I really want us to consider. For, or because, we have not a high priest which cannot be touched with the feeling of our weaknesses or infirmities, but was in all points tempted as we are. All points. Everything I will ever be tempted in, Jesus was tempted. And he was tempted in the optimum way, right? I mean, we might experience little temptations. Well, all of his were the biggest, right? And because of that, well, he knows what we're going through. And again, the greatest temptation was to save himself, to not submit himself and go through the things that he went through. And so too with you and me. It's preserve self. And finishing this verse, tempted like we are, yet without sin. And because of that, and this is, I just love this, verse 16, let us therefore, excuse me, come boldly unto the throne of grace, that we might obtain mercy and find grace in help of time of need. What do you think the time of need is? I mean, any time, right? For sure. But the context and what we've been looking at.
Being tempted to
What?
not deny self.
Yeah, he's right. Exactly. To have our own met. Lord help me. and I'm sure I've told you this in the past, but I just want to reiterate it to you. You know, ask the Lord to give you the grace that you need, that when you are being tempted, when a thought comes to your mind, when a desire wells up within you, whatever it is, to talk back or to be angry or whatever it is, doesn't have to be some big sin, of course, that as well, that we die to that. And do you think God's going to help you? Yeah. Does he? Yeah, exactly. And you have a wonderful, great high priest who's been tempted in all things. And he's there to give you what? Mercy and find grace in time of need. How wonderful that is. So much sin that we find ourselves doing could be foregone by what? Running to the throne of grace. Seriously. Have you ever done that before? Did it work? Yeah. Well, you think it'll work every time? Yeah. Yeah, it will. How wonderful that is. So let's think about other ways. I mean, that others being attempted to be exerted upon you. It's not just us dying to our own will, but other people trying to exert their will upon us. We need to, that's part of what we need to die to as well. And we see numerous examples of that. We see Jesus with his family coming in Mark chapter 3 and said, oh, he's crazy. And, you know, you shouldn't be so doing so much. Have a choice between that or it's all about you. Where's the flesh going to lean? Or where's it going to run? To death or to give me what I want and give me what I think I deserve and such. And yet, you know, this is the message of Jesus. If you're going to follow me, and let's go there. Let's take a look at Luke chapter 9, because this is really one of the 4 places where we see this in the Gospels, where Jesus is making this demand of those that would follow him. Luke chapter 9, verse 23. And he said to them all, if any man will come after me. If you're gonna make it your choice, it's an act of your will, right? He said, any man will. I can't will it for you. You have to will, free will of choice. If you will come after me, what do you need to do, Jesus says? Deny yourself and take up the cross. And again, the cross is a symbol of death. And so it's not just denying yourself, it's death to self. And the reason I turn to Luke is because what Luke includes. What's that? One, direct you to Hebrews 4, 14 through 16. Come to that great high priest and ask for help, right? Because we can't crucify the flesh. We can't die to self on our own. We'll get some hideous looking monster. If self tries to crucify self, it'll be bizarre. It'll be Jim Jones. It'll be... Therefore, brethren, I beg you by the mercies of God that you offer yourself a living sacrifice, that surrender of ourself. And that goes right hand in hand with this Luke 9:23. How often do we need to do that?
Daily.
Daily, that's right. Lord, my life isn't my own. It's yours. I surrender it to you. I give myself to you. And that's part of dying to self. And of course, the Word of God plays a very important role in that as well. Because the Word of God, according to Hebrews chapter 4, and it helps us die. So clear in Hebrews, didn't he? Or not Hebrews, Romans. He said, the things that I don't want to do, I do. The things that I want to do, I don't do. And who will deliver me from this death? Well, it's the Spirit. And so God, I mean, even to surrender ourselves, Does the flesh want to do that? No. Does the flesh want to crucify itself? No. The flesh doesn't want to do any of it. But we have a great high priest who knows exactly, not just what we're going through, but he knows what we need. And so to be able to come to him on a regular basis, daily basis, and cry out to him in surrendering and asking him for grace to help to do that. And as we're being tempted through the day to exert our will rather than surrender it and let God have his way. Okay. So I think we'll take a quick break and come back and listen to your teaching. Yeah?
We're the same. We both picked the same one again.
You did. I guess we're going to have to start
Assigning.
assigning. Yep, I think so. That's what's going to happen.